In this video, we will build upon what we created in the last video. We will create what we call an exploded view. That is an animation that separates all the components of our centrifugal pump. We will be creating multiple behaviors, duplicating those behaviors, and then applying them to separate and different entities.
Before we get started, I want to make one change that I meant to do in the last video, which is tone down the brightness of this light. So under default dynamic lights, remember I'd added that point light. See how it's really kind of washed out? I'm just gonna, with that selected and under the light component, I'm just gonna bring down that intensity. So it's adds a little bit of extra light, but not so much where it's just blasted on the walls. Okay, so that's the first thing we want to do. Now, let's move on to actually adding on some more state machine behaviors. Remember, in the last video, I created two behaviors. One that clicked, where I would click the pump and then it would emit a message. And then the scale behavior is initiated by listening to that message and then scales up and scales down every time it hears that message. So it's really, these two behaviors are interacting with one another using those messages being emitted and listened to. If you also remember in the scale behavior, in the emit and scale up and the emit and scale down, both of those are emitting this message. They explode a message. Now we want to do something with that message, and we want to affect all of the other entities, the child entities of the centrifugal pump. So remember, this pump has several different entities that make up the larger entirety of the pump. So the casing, the drive shaft shield. What we want to do is be able to move all of those parts into different positions so they can all be viewed separately or individually. So I'm going to start and really work my way down. I'm first going to create a behavior for the casing. So I'm going to add component and then state machine. I don't have any behaviors on this, so I will click the plus button. I just want to reiterate again that we are going to be adding on behaviors to the child entities of the centrifugal pump. First, we're starting with the casing. All right. For the first one, we want this selected and the state one to be selected. And because we want to initiate this by listening for that explode message, we are going to call this one listen. And then we're going to add action. And we're going to look for the listen action. And the message we want to add in there is, type it right, explode. That exploded view is really what that message is referring to. The next state we want to add a state, and then we want to call this one wait. And then we're going to add action and search for the wait action. This really is just a pause. So it'll just pause here for however amount of time we elect. In this case, we want it to be 1 second. We want to add another state. In this state, we want to call move out. We will click add action. And we want to, instead of the tween scale, we want to do the tween move. So this will show it moving from one position to the next. We have a few different values we need to fill out here. For the translation values, where we want the casing to actually go, we will make it -1, 0.13, and 0. We will unselect relative. And instead of 1 second, we want to take less time. We'll make it 0.5 seconds. For easing type, we will also do exponential and in out. Again, these don't really make a difference other than just how it looks. Next, we want to be able to then listen for that same message so that it will go back to its original position. So all I need to do is click listen and duplicate. And then move out. I'm going to duplicate that. However, I need to make a few changes. First, I'm going to call it move in. And where we want it to go back to is its original position, which is 0, 0, 0. We'll then connect all of these states with transitions per usual in a counter or a clockwise order. Starting, remember this needs to be selected as the initial state. All right, let's just see how this works. All right, you see how the casing moved over. If I select on the entity again, it goes back in position and scales back down. So I can just go back and forth because they're all looped. You can keep doing it back and forth, back and forth. Now we need to create behaviors for each of the other parts of the pump, except for the platform. We don't need to worry about the platform. It can stay still. So for the drive shaft shield, the engine, and the pump, we need to create behaviors for each of those. Luckily, we don't really have to start from scratch. We can really use what we already created for the casing while making just a few modifications. Down here in the assets panel, I'm going to filter down to only see behaviors. And I need to expand my default pack and see how I have 3 behaviors here. This is another really great use of the assets panel, is to be able to select between behaviors and navigate between behaviors, especially when we're doing something like this. One thing I forgot to do is rename this behavior. So that was a mistake. So I need to call this move casing behavior. All right. Now I want to duplicate this so I can reuse it again. So with it selected, see how I can go to duplicate, and then it creates the move casing behavior 2. I will then rename this one move drive shaft behavior. The only thing I need to change is the move out values. So on my new move drive shaft behavior, I just need to select the move out state and make a few changes. So I'm going to make it 0.3, 0.2, and 0.8. That's all I need to do. And then I need to make another one. So I will duplicate this one again. I will call this one drive shaft shield. Again, I'm really just going down the list of child entities of the centrifugal pump. The values I need to change the move out state to are 0.7, 1, and 0. I will then duplicate it again. And we will name this one move engine. The move out state, again, I select that and I change these values to 1, 0, and 0. I need one more, so I will duplicate the engine behavior, move engine behavior, and rename this one move pump behavior. And then the move out state, I will change the translation values to negative 1.5, and then 0 and 0. Great. I have now created all these different behaviors. However, I've created them in the assets panel, but I've not applied them yet to anything. The casing entity already has its behavior because I started it that way, but the drive shaft doesn't have one yet. So I need to select it, select the move drive shaft behavior, and just drag it over to the inspector panel. Then it applies that behavior to that entity. Same thing with the drive shaft shield, the engine, and then finally the pump. Now all these behaviors will all be working in tandem simultaneously. So if I click play, and then I click on my entity, you see how everything all separates and it gives me that final exploded view that I'm going for. So I can zoom in, investigate what this looks like, get a closer individual view of each part of the pump. If I want it to go back to its original state, I click it again and everything goes back to normal. That's it for this video. We learned how to create more states or add on to the states we already created, add them to other entities, so that we can start getting a better individual view and look at the parts that make up this pump. In the next video, we will look at how to add annotated info cards for each of the parts, so that if I hover over, say, the pump, it'll give me an info card about the pump and I can learn more about that specific part. And I can do the same thing for each piece of the pump. All right, I hope you join us. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments of this video. If you haven't already, please join also our Sumerian community on Slack at slack.sumerian.world.